It's official, an 11th team is coming to Formula 1 and far sooner than many of us expected, after the prior snubbing of Andretti and General Motors' joint venture. However, the date of the deal isn't the only surprise, as while General Motors have been given the green light by FOM and Liberty, Andretti has been entirely axed from the deal aside from a spot on the board, with Mario, the one with a world championship, being the sole survivor of the Andretti axing. And that isn't the end of the surprises though, as an 11th team provides even more opportunities for drama, chaos and shocks, and everything is still to be decided in regards to the structure of the team. Who will be the team principal, where will they be operating from, and the first question on everyone's mind, who will be wearing the Cadillac colors come February 2026? Want to know which drivers are in the running for the Cadillac seats? We thought the silly season was already over and most seats settled for the new regulations, but this has certainly added some complications. So let's start off with the context of just how all of this happened. This past weekend saw a sudden resurgence of hype surrounding the General Motors F1 project, which, given it was a Grand Prix in America, it didn't really come as too much of a surprise. However, the fact that the rumblings turned into concrete announcements so quickly certainly caught us off guard, with it being revealed that GM has agreed to pay a staggering $450 million anti-dilution fee, certainly putting their money where their mouth is, with this amount being over double of the current standard. Liberty Media president Greg Maffei was one of the first, alongside Cadillac and GM, to break the silence surrounding the new entry, and it brought up some pretty interesting points that still need addressing. With Formula One's continued growth plans in the US, we have always believed that welcoming an impressive US brand like GM Cadillac to the grid, and GM as a future power unit supplier, could bring additional value and interest to the sport. We credit the leadership of General Motors and their partners with significant progress in their readiness to enter Formula One. We are excited to move forward with the application process for the GM Cadillac team to enter the championship in 2026. So, no OEM is actually being provided until closer to 2030, and GM Cadillac will start life in 2026 as a glorified customer team. So how exactly is this any different to what was proposed by GM and Andretti back in October last year? Well, Michael Andretti's departure from the project, of course. The younger of the two Andrettis certainly rubbed a lot of people in the paddock the wrong way with his very public posturing, and the introduction of Dan Tauris and TWG Global, who recently took over the Andretti project, has certainly cooled relations between Liberty, FOM, and the General Motors entry. And that's another key part of this. It is now a General Motors entry, meaning their name and backing are 100% in from the start, not a part of the bargain to sweeten the deal down the line as was before. The guarantee of an OEM's full attention and brand awareness seems to have changed things massively, and the removal of the Andretti ego factor was the first in a series of decisions that have led to 11 teams being on the grid in 2026. So who is likely to be leading the team now? Andretti was originally thought to be the man to take charge, but with his departure from the picture, it's now a bit more open. Well, the most likely of all the candidates is Otmar Szafnauer, with the ex-Alpine and Racing Point team boss dropping some pretty major hints back in July that now seem to make a lot more sense. He claimed to be advising an American F1 entry which did not involve Andretti around the time that Dan Tauris took over the project, with him saying this about a potential F1 return. But you know, there's only 10 teams. A lot of them have people in those roles already, so I don't know how many opportunities there are out there, but there's also the 11th and 12th team possibility, so that might be something that would be interesting for me. I've been working with some organizations in North America that have been funding to start an 11th team. It's not Andretti. Now we're just putting some of those building blocks in place to make sure that we have everything that's required in order to be successful to both start a team, but also get an entry. So, you know, that's interesting too. And if Otmar has been advising the creation of this team, then the half-American ex-team boss is certainly in a prime position to lead a team into the first day of preseason practice come 2026. He has a wealth of experience and, beyond anything else, is a liked figure among both the paddock and the fanbase, and the color of his passport will certainly be a thing of note for the people who may or may not be employing his services as an advisor. Other names are being tossed around, but at this early stage, the only one that actually makes any sense is Otmar Szafnauer, providing this is the project that he was talking about. However, just because the team principal situation is fairly easy to pin down, that doesn't mean that everything is set in place and clear, as the drivers' lineup is a complete unknown. We can speculate on a few things, but the pool of current and ex-F1 drivers seemingly available to General Motors is as broad as it is uninspired. It's a no-brainer that a new entry would likely want to secure at the very least one experienced driver, as a keen eye for setup and an intimate understanding of the day-to-day operations of a team, both at race weekends and back at the factory, are essential. Just look at the groundwork laid at Aston Martin by Sebastian Vettel, with the German being highly credited for their meteoric rise through the ranks before settling back into midfield mediocrity this season. I wonder why that could be. An experienced driver such as the currently unemployed and hilarious Valtteri Bottas, who is a 10-time race winner and someone that has made it very clear that they do not wish to play a part-time role in F1 for too long. Currently touted to become a reserve driver for Mercedes, which would keep him somewhat fresh, Valtteri would certainly jump at the opportunity to get back into a full-time race seat, especially one as exciting as the new GM project. Other drivers with experience, such as the recent IMSA racer and dark arts specialist Kevin Magnussen, have been mentioned. However, none come with the race-winning experience, fan appeal, and proven track record of Valtteri Bottas. Oh, and for those of you thinking of commenting about Daniel Ricciardo, haven't you had enough emotional damage for one lifetime? Another really interesting prospect who could come with 5 years experience while being an out-of-left-field shout is Yuki Tsunoda. The interim engine supplier for GM is yet unannounced. However, it is likely to be either Honda or Ferrari, with each manufacturer being capable of exerting their influence as part of an engine deal, and it would potentially keep costs down for the early GM project. With Tsunoda's contract coming to an end in 2025 and Red Bull taking the Japanese driver about as seriously as Bernie Ecclestone takes his taxes, an exciting new project on the lookout for a vast amount of experience for a driver under the age of 30 could be of great interest to Tsunoda, who would have 2 or 3 seasons while there to prove to GM why they should keep hold of him following Honda's exit for the OEM's own entry. Someone with far less experience, but certainly made a name for himself in his short time in the sport, is Franco Colapinto, who is seemingly going to have to look outside of Williams for a seat, given Albon and Sainz is one hell of a lineup, and one that's fairly future-proofed at least for the next few years. Now, you may be thinking the GM would be put off by his crash-happy nature, and maybe they would be. However, Colapinto shows all the signs of being a top-quality driver if he is given the full amount of time to develop. His ascension into being one of the most exciting drivers on the grid was certainly not on our 2024 bingo card, and if you cast your mind back to one Max Verstappen's early career, you'll remember an equally crash-happy yet exciting young driver who stuck it to his teammates and forced every little bit of potential out of the car whenever he could. After another year on the sidelines gaining more and more experience, Colapinto could certainly make for a good shout for one of the GM Cadillac seats. Plus, being from the Americas, he would certainly have a very loyal home fan base, even if they're not from the United States themselves. If GM wants to look closer to home, they will certainly have to be ready to take some risks. Americans and F1 seem to go together like Sergio Perez and making it to Q2. It just doesn't seem to work out most of the time. IndyCar and F2 seem to make the most opportune pool of selection, as let's face it, Kyle Larson would absolutely embarrass himself despite his claims of being the best driver in the world. His only experience in single-seater competition saw him come home in 18th at the Indy 500, which isn't exactly inspiring of a seat in Formula 1. People with a greater track record in American single-seaters, such as the long-speculated for F1 entry Colton Herta, who was denied by lacking super license points alone despite his Indy success, as well as Alex Palou and Pato O'Ward, could certainly lay claim to being the next American or Mexican driver to take up the mantle of Formula 1 driver. I mean, hey, the continued existence of the highly lucrative Mexican Grand Prix may well rely on a Mexican driver, and as much as Sergio Perez could step up to the plate, that all depends on whether he survives his current emotional battering as Red Bull driver. But who do you think would be the best fit? Have we not mentioned them, or is it someone that we've dismissed too quickly? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching.